Imagine transforming your weathered deck into a year-round oasis, or finally fixing that leaky roof before the next nor'easter hits. That's the kind of real talk we're bringing to homeowners in Massachusetts and beyond. Welcome to the PLJ podcast, where craftsmanship meets innovation. I'm your host, Melissa. Welcome to another episode of the PLJ podcast. I'm super excited about today's guest because we're going to talk about ways to save you money. I'm joined by the sales director of Advanced Green Insulation, headquartered in Rockland, Massachusetts. They specialize in insulation services to increase energy efficiency and save you money. They service between 4,000 and 5,000 customers a year, and I'm super excited to introduce you to their sales director, Gustavo Teza. Thanks for coming on the show.
Oh, pleasure. Thank you for having me, Melissa.
Yeah, so first I just wanted you to talk about the company and what you guys do.
All right, so Advanced Green Insulation was created by our CEO, Jesus Barroso, about 13 years ago. It was located in Weymouth before, now we're in Rockland. And it's a company that counts on roughly 160 people today. And as you mentioned, we do this volume of jobs, right, across residential, commercial, branches. We also do a lot of mass save, be it the residential side or the commercial, non-profit side as well. We do a little bit of fireproofing. There are a couple of other companies inside of our group too. But yeah, we're very involved with insulation here in the state, across the entire state.
Yeah, and I learned a little bit about how you guys work with the Mass Save program. And I wanted you to talk a little bit about that so our listeners can understand how that process works and also the union of companies that make that possible.
Okay. So the Mass Save program, right, it is composed by the energy utilities here in Massachusetts. So you would have Eversource, you would have National Grid, you would have Berkshire Gas, Cape Light Compact, and Liberty, right? Mm-hmm. And then the state oversees the administration of the program, right? Mm-hmm. Checks the compliance and whatnot. And then everybody, I mean, myself, you probably as well, we all chip into this program, right? So inside of our utility bills, we give a little bit of money to Mass Save. And what is the purpose of that? Why do we want to subsidize the improvement of the home efficiency across Massachusetts? It's just so the grid can handle. So we have enough power to everybody, right? Mm-hmm. So we don't have blackouts. So in talking about insulation in specific, you will see incentives to make either your building your own house, right? Mm-hmm. Or your property that you rent out to someone, or the business location that you have, either if you're a tenant or if you're a landlord, it doesn't matter, right? You're going to see incentives to make that building consume a little bit less energy. And then, you could participate inside of the Mass Save program, and we can guide you through the steps for that application. So you can save some money because the bills, I guess everybody will agree, they do nothing but to go up lately, right?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and just like their services, they're super efficient with getting you started and working you through the process. I had a question. So one question I had was about how if a space is only... One question I had was about your space. If 5% isn't covered properly, like what that does to the rest of your space. You said something about 48%. You were throwing around some numbers.
Yes. So this is something that is weird to talk about, right? Because you hear it and then it's hard to make sense of it. But it's just basic building science principles, right? And there is math behind it. But if you are missing 5% of insulation on your thermal envelope, right, which is the insulation around the walls and your roof, if you're missing just 5% of area, the overall R value, which is the thermal resistance of the insulation material, right, of the remaining insulation that you have, falls by about 48%. This is insane.
That's a lot.
Right.
I was surprised.
If you're missing a little bit of insulation, that is impacting the performance of your building tremendously. And this is driving your costs to maintain this place properly heated up. So definitely insulation is something that, it's in there working in a passive manner, right? You don't have to wake up in the morning and turn on, turn off insulation. But through time, it degrades in performance. So definitely worth to check the current state. I mean, every 10, 15 years, you should take a good look at your insulation to see if everything is all right. And then add more if necessary, do repairs or change completely.
Yeah, you mentioned that the fiberglass beds, which I have in my own attic, I have the stairs that you pull down. And if they're flattened, that means that they're not really doing their job.
Yes. So as far as insulation goes, air is the biggest insulator, right? And all these materials, they just try to preserve these little air pockets. But now if you don't have the air pockets anymore inside of the material, well, the performance drops. And then through time, the little blown-in cellulose that you have inside of your wall, the fiberglass beds that you have inside of your wall or in the attic, right? Or the blow cellulose that you have in the attic, all those will suffer mechanical compression. And then you no longer have that initial R value. You no longer are saving like you were.
And you kind of just described some of it, but could you tell our listeners how attic ventilation works?
All right. So this is very important, right? Because you want to provide moisture control to the air that is inside of your attic, right? So it's super important to make sure that everything is fine, that an attic is breathing properly, and you also don't have issues with the air seal in your house. We were discussing as well I-stems, the formation of I-stems, right?
Yes.
But for instance, the air will enter through your soffits, right? And will exit through your ridge vent. So we got to make sure that those, first of all, they're properly sized because there is a ratio between their sizes, so you have appropriate flow. And after that, you got to make sure that the air seal that you have in your house is very good. And I guess let's enter on that subject of I-stems.
What was that? Sorry?
Let's enter on the subject of I-stems.
Yeah, because we had I-stems like so many people, and mine were, what happened to our home is that the water came through our front hallway, the light fixture. The lights sit within this glass fixture, and it was filling up with water until, a day or two passed, and I noticed it. I thought it was going to like explode and shatter glass everywhere. So what I kind of figured out was there's probably wherever they drilled to put up in the wall or the ceiling to put in that light fixture, there must have been air escaping, or you were talking about like the warm air and how that melts.
Right. So the purpose of insulation is to maintain the condition space efficient, right? And then as soon as you have issues with air seal inside of this condition space, this air that is now warm and wants to rise, it's going through the penetrations that you have on your main ceiling and your walls and whatnot. And then once you see too much of this warm air reaching your attic, now that layer of snow that you have starts to melt in the bottom. And then because it melts, it gets to the edge of your roof line, and then it freezes, right? But as it freezes and it starts freezing more and more and more, it starts to climb back through your shingles. So it could be that what you saw was a roof leak, but maybe not, because maybe you didn't have any issues with that before, or you just saw the ice crawling back through the inside. Yeah. And how to prevent that is by properly maintaining the air seal on your attic, so you don't have this hot air going in there, and you don't have snow now with different temperatures, being subject to different temperatures, and then not melting, not forming ice dams.
Yeah.
And we saw a lot of ice dams on this past storm, right? It was a storm like, I don't know if there was a bigger storm than this in the past 10 years. 2015, nobody forgets 2015, right? But then now, nobody forgets 2026.
Right. Yeah. So one thing I was wondering if you could troubleshoot, I actually had a couple wires that were tripped. So the light fixture, that wire wasn't tripped in the box, but for whatever reason, it tripped the fridge and the washer and dryer. So what is the water just like moving around and messing up some of the electrical then? Because that's like another thing that I'm going to have to like think about. What is this going to cost, and what else is going on with my roof?
Well, yeah, if you had water going close to your wires, that can be an issue, right? I would refer to an electrician at that point, but through capillarity, water does walk on the wires, right? And then corrodes the wires from the inside and whatnot, right? So yes, a lot of things could ensue by having water close to your wires.
Yeah. So what are the different products that you use to insulate homes? Like we talked about fiberglass. There's a spray that you use that's super efficient.
So at Advanced Green Insulation, we work with all types of insulation, right? And even if you heard of something super efficient, super green that was just out in the market, chances are we are already installing or we help bring to the state. We like to be at the forefront of innovation as far as insulation technologies go. So what we do the most, let's put it this way, we do a lot of fiberglass, we do a lot of blown-in cellulose, but above all, we do a lot of spray foam, right? Be it closed cell or open cell. And it is a superior way of insulating a house because you have the benefit of the thermal boundary and air seal at the same time, right? So it's 2 for 1. And also the life of it is far superior to other materials, right? You can comfortably say that your spray foam, as long as it is properly applied, will have a life of at least 40 years, right?
Yeah.
Where fiberglass and blown-in cellulose will probably see 15 years. It depends of the installation.
Okay.
Yeah.
And if someone wanted to check, like I can easily go up in my attic and check to see what the insulation is looking like. But what if someone wanted to check their walls? You mentioned like drilling a hole behind the door. How could someone go check and make sure or see, what's going on?
Well, the first culprit, and I guess a lot of people will relate to this, is that sometimes, right, there is a wall in your house that is especially cold, right? For some reason. There's one that is, I don't know why, it's especially cold, right? Well, chances are something's going on with the insulation there. So perhaps you don't have at all. Perhaps you have too little. Perhaps you had a good one once it was built, and then through time it settled, right? So ways to check that. Yeah, drilling is one that is kind of invasive, but is very practical, right? You drill a small hole and you simply look inside, or you try to fish something from the inside to see if some fiberglass comes out. A lot of people are using thermal cameras now. Our sales team use thermal cameras as well.
Okay.
And nowadays you can buy one that you simply connect to your phone. So pretty accessible technology and gives you a great reading too. So you point that to your wall and then you see, oh my God, the temperature is so high on the upper portion of my wall cavity. Well, that means you don't have insulation in there. That's where the heat loss is happening, right?
Yeah.
So those are the ways. We pretty much got to do a visual inspection of it. Probably drill to see inside. It's the surest way. Or use thermal cameras, right?
Awesome. So what is the turnaround time for someone who notices their insulation is really weak, or like you said, they have a really cold wall, their energy bill is going way up? How does the process start? And you mentioned there's the process of getting the permit. So I know that's a big question for our customers, efficiency, saving money, and then time.
Right. So let's say, well, you're a homeowner and you're seeing us right now chatting about this and you're like, well, yeah, this resonates with me, right? My house, I guess it could use, or it's old. I have been living here 25 years. I never looked at the insulation. Chances are you need to look now. So how do you start? Well, you get in touch, right, with us, and we will deploy a sales representative that will come down and inspect the house free of charge, right? So he will either come on the same day or the following day. That's the turnaround time. After that, he will be checking your electric bills and your gas bills, right? Or you could be using oil as well. But we would just check the rate, which rate you have inside. Are you an R1 customer, R2, R3, or R4, right? Once that is checked, we know if you're eligible for MassSave or not. For R1 and R3, you are eligible for MassSave. So R1, R3, you're eligible, okay? After that, it's a very simple evaluation. We submit the application on the same day or the next day, and they already start checking into it, and they get in touch with you. So depending on where you live, you're going to get a call from a lead vendor called Rise Engineering, or if it's somewhere else, another portion of the state, is managed by Clear Result. That's the name of the other lead vendor. So either Rise Engineering or Clear Result will give you a call and say, hey, wonderful that you're interested in the program. Do take advantage of it. Here is what your incentive level could look like, right? So they're going to send a contract your way, and as long as you can agree upon that, you sign that. You also sign a permit authorization form that gets sent back to us, and after that, we just reach back out to you to see what day works for you for us to be there working, right? So once the permit's out and we're there, but well, it's very quick as well. Our execution lead time is 1 to 2 days, right? Out. So the entire process, as long as Mass Save move fast enough and the town moves fast enough to issue the permit, you could be talking about 2 weeks, 3 weeks, something like this. I have seen faster, but I also have seen slower. So that's the key number to have, 2 to 3 weeks.
Yeah. And one thing, I was working at a nonprofit last year, and it was a school where the building was older. I think it used to be a restaurant or something, but they also struggled with ice dams and leaks. So can you mention a few businesses that would really benefit from working with you guys?
Absolutely. So nonprofits, regular businesses as well, even commercial real estate, right, above 5 units. Yes, there are tons of funds, and this is vastly underutilized inside of the program, right?
Yeah.
So here's the invitation. If you're a business owner, or you are a tenant, or you are the landlord, right? It does not matter. If you're part of a church, or there's this school that your child goes to, and someone noticed the ice dam and whatnot, it is available to everybody. We just issued an approval to the Sacred Heart in Kingston, which is a school. We just issued an approval for a church in Salem.
Nice.
So please do take advantage of that. The funds are there, and the incentives are very, very generous as well. For nonprofits, you can see up to 100% of incentives, which is unheard of, right?
Yeah.
Businesses will count on up to 80% if you are owner of the real estate, and if you are a tenant, up to 100% as well. So mind you, and we already pay for this. You already pay for this. It's inside of your bill. Just take advantage.
Yeah. What are some things that homeowners might not be aware of that they're going to see on their bill? You mentioned, we talked about electric vehicles earlier today.
Yes, and you probably heard this from a solar sales guy, right? At some point. And until we started with Mass Save, we were not paying attention either, right? Because, well, you need electricity and you need gas at home. You don't have the option to not pay. What are you going to do, right? But then after we joined Mass Save, then people started to ask us, so where's the catch? Who's paying for this? And then we sought to understand. And, well, we're all paying for this. And you don't have an option. You don't have an option. You cannot opt in or opt out. So among the charges that you see in your electricity bill, you will see that you are chipping in for programs, right? Efficiency programs. And then, as I was mentioning before, you are also chipping in for the electric vehicle program, right? Oh, but I don't even own an electric vehicle. Well, it does not matter, right? You're paying for it anyway. So might as well take advantage. You fund Mass Save. It's customer rate funded, right?
Yeah.
So we all fund Mass Save. So please do use it. Do use it.
Yeah. And one other point I wanted to bring up was how you can conserve energy and put it back into the grid. You briefly touched on that. How does that work?
So there are programs inside of Mass Save for smart temperature control. So you can allow actually Mass Save to control the thermostat of your house, for instance.
Okay.
So they identify what is peak demand and what is not peak demand, and they adjust accordingly. Of course, there are minimums and maximums that are respected, right? But they kind of know because of your energy consumption when you're home or not. And they can adjust that for you. So every day you get adjusted. And because of that, you get some incentives, right?
Yeah.
Now, if you have installed solar in your business, for instance, perhaps you installed a system that it was just big enough to provide energy to your business. But there are options to go with bigger systems, and then that residual energy you can sell back to the grid, or you can send that energy elsewhere. I was learning about that too. I found amazing. You could send it to another business that you want, right?
Wow.
But those are ways that the state found to create this incentive where, hey, if you can use less, consume less, or generate some more, we're going to try to help you. We're going to try to incentivize you to do that.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And so my home was built in the mid 1960s. So would I be able to work with you guys if my heat is oil?
Yes. As long as the other utility that you have, so you're heating your house with oil, right? And then let's say you have an electric provider. That could be Eversource, National Grid, or another company. So as long as you are dealing with one of the companies that is part of MassSave, you have access to the program. Oh, okay. Gustavo, but I use gas and then the electric company is municipal. In that specific case, you're not actually chipping into MassSave, right? Because the municipality is not, it has its own power plant or whatever it is. It doesn't have MassSave, right? Sometimes they have an equivalent program that is a little bit less generous. So worth checking with your municipality as well.
Okay.
But in that case, yes, you are eligible to participate. And important to mention too, it is the intention here in Massachusetts that people stop using gas and stop using oil. So they're very much inclined and interested in serving homeowners such as yourself.
Yes, I've been hearing a lot about that. So I wanted to make sure to ask so I could be informed and make plans as we do more house renovations.
Right.
So after that, I was going to ask something else. Sorry. Ask about that. Sorry. Where are we at? Okay. So I asked about that. Oh. So if someone wants to get started today, where can they find you and what's the first step? Giving you guys a call, heading to your website. Can you give a little information?
Yes, you can visit us over at advancedgreeninsulation.com, right? Or call our number, which is 781-857-6700, right? You can probably put that in the bottom because, right? If I have to repeat again, I'll probably forget. But so yeah, just give us a call and we'll be glad to help you.
Awesome. Well, Gustavo, thank you so much for coming on the show today. So excited to talk about energy efficiency and ways to save you money. Is there anything else that our listeners should know of? Any final words?
Yes. Do try to take advantage of all this as soon as you can. And why this call to action? It's because we have been seeing changes in the budget, right? And MassSave counts on roughly $5.5 billion of funds for every 3 years. And we already know, it's already in progress, that a budget cut will happen for the next cycle in the order of $1 billion. So do take advantage of this. For instance, mini splits before the incentive was on average $10,000, right? Now they're $7,500, right? So do take advantage of this while it is there. Don't leave for after, okay? Just don't leave for after. And that will be the message.
Well, I know PLJ Carpentry is so excited to partner with Advanced Green Insulation. Thank you so much to their sales director, Gustavo Teza, for coming in today and partnering with us and giving us a wonderful presentation. I know we learned so much, and I know this is such an amazing program and company for Massachusetts residents to take advantage of. So thanks for coming on the show
Absolutely.
today.
My pleasure, and my pleasure to start this partnership with PLJ, and you guys are phenomenal as well. Absolutely the gold standard on the Cape and South Shore. And you are in good hands. And if you have both these contractors working with you, you are golden. You're good to go. Thank you.
Thank you. And thanks so much for listening, everyone. We'll catch you on the next episode.